Facebook has a new name, as we know already from last week. The U.S. tech giant is rebranding as it bears plans for delving deeper into the metaverse and shifts its focus on building it. Besides Facebook, other global tech giants such as ByteDance and Sony are vying to dipping into the metaverse. The move will add more competition to an idea that is poised to take off. Big players are riding high as they have been investing heavily in such technologies. So what exactly is the metaverse that they are talking about? How does the metaverse future look like? And how it's likely to impact all of us? Let's get some answers. For more on the metaverse, we are joined in Beijing by Jay Huang, founding partner of J-Stone Capital and former managing director of Intel China, and Edgar Perez, CEO of MrEdgarPerez.com. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
I'm sure as tech experts, you would love me to ask this question. What would metaverse mean? What kind of beautiful scenarios would it bring to all of us?
I think that for ordinary person to fully appreciate or understand metaverse is watching on the Hollywood movies. There is a new one called Free Guy, and it actually showed in Chinese theater about a month ago. It's a wonderful movie to illustrate what metaverse and can change our life in 10 or 20 years. So basically, we are maybe bridge or merge two worlds, the physical world and versus the virtual world. And right now, most of the time, we're living in the real world. And maybe down the road, we could spend a significant part of life in the virtual world.
Okay.
I don't know if this answers your question or not.
Mr. Perez?
I think for most people, the metaverse will mean expanded experiences, the capability to be able to visit places far away, to meet friends from all over the world in real time, and also in the virtual world, feeling, sensing that the person is almost close to you, hearing you and feeling you. I think that's probably the big impact. And of course, that's going to have an impact not only in our social lives, but also in our work and education environments.
Fascinating concept. Is Facebook going to have quote unquote ownership of it?
I don't think so, the ownership. Of course, and changing the company names from Facebook to Meta actually definitely raised up awareness of metaverse for the every people. So from that perspective, it's a big deal. On the other hand, as we all know, changing a company's name is not sufficient nor necessary condition for any company to transform it from a good company to a great company. So from that perspective, it's not a big deal.
The concept has been there for quite some time. Different investors are taking advantage of the concept as well. So, Mr. Perez, what do you make of the latest change?
Well, when you think about the metaverse, you think about the convergence of our real lives and virtual lives. From that standpoint, there have been already efforts to create metaverses by different companies. What Facebook is trying to do is to create a new infrastructure, a new metaverse. Well, of course, they would like to have some sort of ownership of the platform, and eventually they confirm that with a change of the name to Meta.
There are different concepts flying around. Of course, metaverse is one of the most crucial. But what kind of time frame are we talking about in terms of what metaverse and related technologies would eventually change our lives, Mr. Perez?
That's still the future. So that doesn't exist yet. There are some companies already have individual metaverses, but the promise of the metaverse is actually to have a convergence of all these different metaverses. So people can go through Fortnite to WhatsApp to Facebook and so on without creating new IDs, without changing their IDs. That doesn't exist yet. And I don't think it's going to be present in any way, shape, or form in at least 5 years.
Mr. Huang, though, there are several issues. I think it's as important as probably the concept of metaverse and what it could mean to us in the future, if not more. For example, some of the issues that we have now solved, that is convergence, which Mr. Perez already talked about. We see very different systems established by meta companies around the world. And then we also talk about the privacy issue, the safety and security issue, in which there is no international, shall we say, procedure for a consumer to be able to function. So how do you see all those different questions vis-a-vis the concept of metaverse?
I think the metaverse may be eventually going to change our life in 20 years time frame. So we are still in infancy stage of this total evolution. Yeah. Technology-wise, you named a few. There's also other technologies, and then this is very similar as iPhone, perhaps. And you know, when iPhone was first come to the smartphone, it's people say it's revolutionary, but you look at the technology iPhone use, hardly to say which one is revolutionary. It's a series of technologies which evolving, and then put them together, become the whole product is revolutionary. So the similar as a metaverse, it has consists of lots of technologies and the AR, VR, you know, computing, AI, etc. And of course, there's a lot of unsolved questions, but we look back to see and how the internet has been evolved in the early infancy. There's a whole bunch of issues, similar as you brought it up. But I think at this early stage, we don't have to have the solution or answers to those issues and questions. All we need is just let it grow, maybe wildly and unregulatedly at the beginning.
But to me, it's interesting because some of the questions that I mentioned already existed at the very early stage of internet birth. And look at where we are today. Of course, some of the problems have been, you know, solved to a certain extent as we went along over the past 2 decades or so. But a lot of them have not been solved. Let's just use Facebook as an example. It's facing tremendous political and legal pressure right now about some of the things that they haven't handled well. For example, personal security, data, and the list goes on. And now we have a new concept, well, relatively new concept, a lot are enthusiastic about, and yet those earlier and important issues have not been resolved. So my question really is, how would you balance, you know, the curiosity and excitement about developing so-called a bigger area, a new area, vis-a-vis some of the current and most urgent questions that one have to face and give, you know, answers to?
Onus is going to be on the regulators to actually force the companies to move forward in the most precise ways, taking care, of course, of the users' needs. Okay. That's as much as the companies will say it's going to be something voluntary, I don't think so. Definitely, companies obviously have a board of directors and shareholders to respond to, and the government will have to act through, of course, regulation or legislation to force the companies to protect the users' information.
All right. Mr. Huang?
I think there's 2 issues. First of all, metaverse, and they are connect or merge and virtual world and with reality, real world. And another one is a lot of these ingredients are built upon the internet. If you look back and then the internet evolution or revolution trajectory, originally the world growth, now it's become a lot more mature. So lots of issues, and you brought it up, it's surfaced. Now it's perhaps we're going to into a more regulation stage for internet as a mature technology and applications. So those and the regulation and challenges is going to have a similar impact to metaverse. In another way, metaverse and you know, before they're come into birth, it's already in some more regulated world as compared to the early stage of the internet. So having said that, I don't think we need to worry about metaverse because there's still future. Yeah. And at its infancy, we can let it grow a little bit, maybe freely, and as wildly as possible. And then by the time it is become the reality, we can worry about the regulation back then.
Yeah.
But the current issues, you brought it up, but the current regulation need on the internet will have an impact to the metaverse.
Thank you so much, Edgar Perez and Jay Huang. Really appreciate it.